to episode 2 of Linnovate's podcast. Today we're joined by Lior Kesos, the CTO of Linnovate. Hello, Lior.
Hi, it's Kesos. It's just basically like key and sauce. So just imagine this kind of little sauce of keys or something. So that will give you the right pronunciation. It's Kesos or Kesos. Yeah.
Spelled Kesos.
Yeah, well, don't forget the spelling. It doesn't add up.
Lior is what they call you, the Kubernetes ninja.
I don't know. It's all full of ninjas and warriors and gurus and stuff like wizards. It's just like a chapter in D&D. Full of these characters. But I simply actually finally understand Kubernetes enough to kind of to make enough damage. No, but seriously, this kind of Kubernetes is simply a way of thinking. So once you get to a point that you can simply think in the Kubernetes patterns, so you look at the world slightly differently. It's kind of different than other historic like DevOps or system administrative, practices. So I can actually think in Kubernetes. I'm very proud.
Takes skill. Lior, correct me if I'm wrong, but you brought Drupal to the front scene of Israel's development community.
So yeah, I can kind of speak a bit about what I've been doing. So I've been like 20 years, past 21 years. I've been dealing with open source, Linux, different. And, and now open source is like cool, all the cool kids, they use the open source and they do this kind of stuff. But once it was a very, very kind of niche and very, very kind of small thing that wasn't very known. So, and about like in 99, I was sure I'm going to be a musician, 98. And then I went, and my father told me, look, while you're kind of thinking about being a musician, maybe you should be like a PC technician, or, there's this high-tech thing growing up in Israel, so maybe you should go and do that. So, okay, and then I have a friend that worked in one of these kind of colleges. So I went there to have a little kind of something to do while I'm working on my musical career. But then I suddenly felt really, really at home, really powerful and confident, and like in the command line, the terminal. So I learned how to be Unix system administrator, and I worked a few months in a very big American company called BMC Software, and then I ditched them about 4 months after I was there. I'm always kind of, I have this kind of drive of just kind of running around and changing stuff. So, and then I joined the startup that dealt with Linux and managing Linux system from 2000 to 2006. And then I was like in the back row seat of looking at this amazing revolution rollout, from it being this thing of small kind of hackers and all kind of people, in the edge of society, to like IBM and Oracle standing, and supporting it. And it's, wow, suddenly the thing that I was doing like in the very, very edge, at the cutting edge, it became like the mainstream. So, and since then it's always become like that, because back then there was like Windows and Solaris and all of these operating system stuff like that. But the world slowly kind of edged toward where I was always. So there's a lot of really smart people that they can go, their career was, I need to learn this thing. And now, now Microsoft has ditched the thing, so I need to relearn this thing. And they keep going like this, so it builds a lot of man. And I'm like a slow turtle, I just go in a straight line. So I'm pretty much in the same level, and guru, wizard, whatever you want to call it. But it's a very linear and kind of, I feel like nothing has changed the past 20 years.
But would you say that the space is, like you mentioned, things people ditch, different programs and different softwares, different hosting sites. Would you say that the space is constantly changing at a fast pace, or?
Yeah, I mean, everything is constantly changing in a very, very fast pace. once you'd build stuff like, I don't know, in .NET or in PHP. That was it. You build a site in PHP. But now there's like different content management systems and WordPress and Drupal and this and that and like gazillion front-end frameworks and a gazillion, and the whole open source ecosystem is simply shattering to million technologies. But within those technologies, and this is something I think that we do well in Linnovate, is we can pretty fast find the right ones to hedge our bets on. It's like picking a good stock. If you put money on Google after the IPO, you'd made a lot of money. And if you put money on Amazon, after they went to AWS, it grew like, I don't know. So basically, it's very similar to technology. And so I looked at Linux, wow, this Linux. And then I went to Drupal, in about 2006, said, oh, this is very interesting technology. And we built our company based on, helping push Drupal into the community, into the Israeli community. But then, a couple of years later, we understood limitations of Drupal. So we pushed the mean stack, which is Node and Mongo. And it simply dealt with a lot of things we couldn't do with Drupal. So we did it with this kind of mean stack. And then we've pretty much got our bets right. And about 3 years ago, I looked, it was like in 1 week, it was like a very important week, that two things happened in this week. First of all, Amazon said they're joining the CNCF. The CNCF is the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. It's like overarching organization that Google created when they contributed to Kubernetes. So Amazon, being the 500-pound gorilla in the cloud space, acknowledging this open source cloud kind of alternative in a way. So that was like a big deal. And the second one was when Docker, which is a very important technology in the basis of all of this world, when they said that they will support Kubernetes. So because they had a Docker Swarm, which was the orchestrator that was heading with a head-in-head race with Kubernetes. So this is their white flag saying, look, this business model is not going to work. The business model, Kubernetes is one. And, when I looked back into 2000 and Linux, so it was like a slow, there was like IBM, the other thing, and after a couple of years, it was, banking companies and oil companies, and they kind of rolled out over a couple of years. But when Google contributed to Kubernetes, I think it was 2016, 15, 16, something like that, the whole industry just kind of like little ducklings, and I've never seen anything like that, and not in something so impactful, because this is just like you have the operating system for your computer, Windows, and then the operating system for the servers, and Android, and the operating server for your phone, Android or iOS. But then this is the operating system of the cloud. And because of Google's, deep knowledge and dealing with these kind of heavy load containerized applications, and because they were really, really smart, so they created both Kubernetes and the CNCF to create an ecosystem around Kubernetes. So everybody just kind of, just kind of lined in, and I think and then this is about 3-4 years ago. I don't know exactly remember when, but then I understood the inevitability. How do you say that? It's inevitable. Okay, the inevitability of Kubernetes. I said, look, this is the next thing. This is the next thing that consolidates the market, just like Linux consolidated the market. This is the next thing that consolidate the computing as we know it. So I took Linnovate into, and it is very kind of, I do this a lot. I do it less, but I used to do it a lot. I simply went on this kind of death march to Kubernetes land, which is because it's tough. It's tough to take, like your paradigm And in a second, you'll ask me, I think you'll ask me, what's the difference between the paradigms? But the thing is that to change the paradigm of the kind of classic computing, the way the classic computing and DevOps work, to this kind of Kubernetes, they call it the cloud native approach. It's something that was born to the cloud, because Linux wasn't born to the cloud. It was born to be your server or to be like a proxy server. So if you have any questions.
so maybe walk us through what it means that now there is this Kubernetes, and as companies take on the Kubernetes style or the system, what would their concern be to switch over?
So let's kind of pause on what's the difference between this old style and the new style. What does it mean? You say Kubernetes style, because we need to understand, because a lot of the answers are kind of keyed, and the origin story comes from what's the difference between this new style. So in the old style, what you'd have like a server, and you'd install an operating system on that server, and then you'd install software on that operating system, like a web server, a mail server, something like that. And then you'd configure this thing with different things, and then you'd apply like application on the web server, and you'd have it's like a layered cake, this layered cake kind of thing. And this new style is kind of weird, because it's all about describing your application and its needs. So it's not you're not basically building this kind of layered cake, but you're looking at the applications. That this application needs these dependencies, and people can speak to it from this ingress, whatever, this kind of route inside, and it will need this volume, this and that. And then it applies this like object of the describing this application. It applies it on whatever hardware it finds. So I can take the same description of this application and apply it on my data center, which is on-prem. It's disconnected from the internet in like a bank or a defense sector. Just apply the objects on those things. But I can simply apply it on the cloud, the same exact thing. Now, this is a very powerful idea, because then I can testing on the cloud and then put it inside, because it creates an abstraction layer. It's like a layer that I create this kind of object, and I can put it anywhere. So then I don't get excited, because as long as somebody's saying I'm using Kubernetes, whatever, you want to use Google, use Google. You want to use Azure, AKS, use. You want to put it install. You want to use Rancher on-prem. You want to use Kubernetes. I don't care. Just like if you're using Windows 10, so and you want to install Photoshop, it's going to work because it's Windows 10. What do you want? It's not going to be, I don't care if it's localized Chinese, it's still going to work. Okay, so it's the same idea. I have my description of the application and apply it to different Kubernetes-based systems. And that's now it's, it's a very tough learning curve. And in a way, the way that Linnovate is now kind of framed, because for years we've been like a company giving services, building projects. But now it's kind of like Elon Musk and Tesla. So everybody's saying, look, like Elon, so he's making cars, right? To make these beautiful, amazing kind of cars. But some of the things that are most amazing is simply the way he makes them. Okay, he has this crazy gigafactories and these 3 printers like in the size of buildings, creating welding stuff, and he creates these crazy batteries. So, okay, the result is an amazing car, but the question is, how do you make the car? And what technology and what kind of jumps in technology you use to make this car? And I think that this is, our biggest strength. Because what's happening now, especially through K8 support, which is our very, we really believe in this kind of product and offering, basically providing Kubernetes support and not having people do this death march through Sibir, through the cold and the hunger and the wolves and the tigers. No, but through this whole kind of, instead, let us kind of bootstrap your Kubernetes journey. And that's also the brand, the K8S, which is like Kubernetes for short, and support. So that's the K8 support or K8 support. But so we're very passionate about Kubernetes and very passionate about the way modern software is assembled and built, and very opinionated about that. And that's a lot of what we're doing now, is simply trying to handhold organizations in this in their cloud native journey.
So what would you like? It falls within a company, the responsibility of DevOps, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So when you mentioned the K8 support provided by Linnovate, how does Linnovate take the current DevOps and make it better or improve it?
So DevOps is also this kind of ragtag kind of buzzword that everybody's using it, to say different things. So once, I in trade, I'm a system administrator. I'm a sysadmin. And a sysadmin, pretty much does the same thing a DevOps guy does. But I think that DevOps is slightly more attuned to the developer. The sysadmin, or the SRE, like sometimes it's like a cloud architect and stuff like that, they're attuned to have the server, like the mail server, working. I need my web server not to go down, to be, speedy, to work well. But the DevOps is very, very focused on the dev, because it's the development operations. It's in a way, it's like this gray matter. So some of the best the DevOps people are developers, not sysadmins, because they understand, the flow of development. And what's happening, so when you look at DevOps, the whole idea is how do we serve the developer? How do we improve the development velocity? How do we improve the development speed? How do we improve the resolution of the change? Because imagine I have like this system, and it's what they call the monolith. I have this blog post talking about big things becoming small things, and basically they have this idea of there's like spaghetti software, spaghetti code, okay? So you have like this monolith, a huge application for tons and tons of stuff, and only Jim and only Dima, Dimitri know how to kind of work with this application, because inside this, everything's mixed in everything. They call it like spaghetti code. And one of the things that's happening is the move to ravioli. Okay, so it's like a very Italian strong kind of
within the spaghetti.
Yeah, it's inside the spaghetti, and the whole pasta realm. But the move from spaghetti to ravioli. Now, what's happening in ravioli? Everything is kind of self-contained, and it's separate. So it's still the bolognese, it's still the same sauce, it's still kind of pasta kind of thing, right. But it's isolated. And when it's isolated, imagine, I can actually come and take a ravioli piece and put something instead. Upgrade one of those, and be much more complicated to just take one spaghetti, when it's intertwined with everything else. So, and that created like a huge revolution, not only in Italian cuisine, but it's a revolution in the way you build software. Because when you build software, especially after a while, every step you make can simply, excuse this, I don't know, I don't want to cuss, but can really ruin.
Right.
Yeah, it can really ruin. You see, I'm behaving. So it can really ruin, a bunch, all of the dependencies, all kind of stuff that's dependent about this change. So you change something, and if anybody was ever like a client and had like a developer working for this client, doesn't matter if he hired them or it's like a subcontractor, what happens is when you change something, and you ruined all of the other stuff. Why didn't you check? I can't check it. There's so many lines of code, so many little, imagine what, software like Salesforce or like Monday or like this huge, or like Elementor Experts that we've built, this huge sites. And if you change something here, you can break something there. So now the whole idea is that when you change something, if they're isolated, if it's like not like a spaghetti thing, but it's kind of isolated kind of components, what happens is that this change, doesn't affect. I can have tests checking this component. And then when I put the new component, I can test it again. And I have unit tests checking this dependency with this, so that nothing changed here. And then before I deploy to the production, I have this kind of confidence that I'm not doing here and breaking there. And this is one of the things, if you look at the development speed and velocity, when you look at the Wix and all of these huge, some of these are our clients, like Similar or Wix, these companies, what's happened is that, once upon a time, or if you look at the governmental agencies and governmental offices, which are also our clients, but there's very different kind of mentality there. Because then they have, we have a release this month. We need to prepare to the release. We need 3 weeks of QA to prepare for the release. And now nobody's going to sleep because we're going to do the release. Now I'm going to fix all of the stability issues because of this release. And it's very, very dramatic. This step forward is very dramatic. But then you have Wix, deploy or Outbrain, deploying, 15 times to production in one day. Are you nuts? I don't understand. This is very, very frightening. But what they're doing is simply the resolution of the change. They're changing much smaller little ravioli pieces, and they have testing and automatic testing on the ravioli pieces, giving the confidence not only for the VP R&D to press the green button and then everything goes out, because it's simply assembled from much smaller pieces. So the whole idea of DevOps is, and this another buzzword called CICD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, is once you set it right, once you set it up correctly, you can build and you can be like an enterprise organization, but move in the speed of Wix. Now that's a strong idea, because what's happening is it's not like, look, I'm a Fortune 500, we have regulation, we have security, we have this, we have that. It's very, very complicated. Or I'm like the Ministry of Health, and I'm built kind of crooked, and I don't have the most amazing people on my team. I don't have the budget for Wix engineers, so I'm doomed to be in this kind of mediocrity. So no, you're not. The tools, this ecosystem of CI/CD, these ecosystems, and we're kind of blogging about this stuff. We're kind of living this stuff. We're very passionate about this stuff because it has changed the way that we build software. It has let us build Teslas. We'd kind of crank out these little kind of Dodges and little Suzukis and Hyundais and stuff like that. But once your manufacturing, jumps up a notch, you start building Teslas. And that's like a totally different experience for the end customer.
And the metaphors are incredible. That was awesome.
Wait. I need to stop you right here. There is a very big, it's like a caution thing. I do that. Do not enter with the ravioli into the Tesla, because you can kind of have all kind of stains of the ravioli that, when you're talking about stains, it doesn't really matter if it's spaghetti or ravioli. You're going to still kind of, so I'd think twice before that.
Good warning. You mentioned CI/CD, and recently there's a lot of talk about having a complete CI/CD. Is that something that you see feasible, possible? Is that attainable for a company?
Yeah, again, let's go to what's a complete CI/CD. So let's also speak about like definitions. Continuous integration, CI, is my ability to, there's also another kind of buzzword called GitOps. What is this GitOps thing? There was this Git. So with Git, the CI always starts with a source management system, and in 99% of the world, it's Git, which is a lot of, just a side note, a lot of the people, there's Linus Torvalds, the guy, you come from, have you heard of Linus?
Yeah.
What did Linus write? Do you know what Linus wrote?
Didn't he start Linux?
Yeah, so he started Linux. Okay, so everybody come, and then if you come to people that are, live in the thing, says, what's the most amazing thing Linus wrote? And needing to hesitate, because Linus also wrote Git. So, and he wrote Git to manage Linux. Now, the impact, you start getting in knots. Wait, what's bigger? Because when you look at GitHub, all of the open software, so it's huge, these two huge contributions, making a dent in the world of Linux and Git. So specifically, so I go back to my point. It all starts with Git. And GitOps is how do I trigger the operations using the Git. So the idea is once I commit something of my code, something happens. And automatically something happens. What happens? It builds my code. So we were talking about these spaghetti code, which is called a monolith. Again, in the Linnovate blog, there's a blog, something called Big Things Become Little Things, or something like that. You can check it out. But the idea is that there's these monoliths, these big kind of monoliths, and once you break them up, so if I commit something, the breaking up, like a single point of ravioli, is called a microservice. So this kind of one single microservice, and you talk about microservice architectures, it's basically 18 pieces of ravioli in a jar, in like a bowl. Simply different microservices, all kind of connected to each other, but not kind of too much wrapped in each other. And then what happens is once I commit something, automatically, not in the production, but in my Docker registry, imagine like this cabinet on the way to the production. So as I'm preparing this new ravioli piece, so, I'm putting it in the water or something like that. This is like my new kind of ravioli that's supposed to replace an existing piece. So what happens is that I cook something, I do this git commit, and it prepares this piece. But to actually put it in the plate, that's the deployment. So one of them is building it, and one of them is deploying it. And you'd maybe place it differently depending on the size of the plate, and you'd maybe use a different sauce or something like that. So it's not just I'm getting hungry. But anyway, it's not about this. The whole idea here is that the CI, it pushes, and when you say complete CI, in a way there is like so totally, it's totally obtainable. There's amazing tools out there, cloud tools and on-prem tools. But the real problem, there's this a saying in Hebrew called More Nevuchim, which is the instructor of the guys that are slightly, it's not confused.
Perplexed.
What? Perplexed, yeah, I mean, what? So and this kind of feeling when you enter, let's say you're a junior DevOps guy, and then you have somebody, your boss comes to you and says, hey, I heard this Docker thing is really important, so I want to build a Docker, put it in the harbor, then to deploy it into a Helm chart, then it will go to the Kubernetes, make sure you have it in the GKE, but we have a DR in the Rancher, and he goes like, huh? He's totally kind of lost. Now, so we're basically, the way we position ourselves, we're the tour guide. We're the instructor, walking you through this kind of terminology and figuring out, how to piece this kind of puzzle. Because I've been doing this for 20 years, practically 21 years, and the company is around for 15 years. That's like a long time, and we've experienced a lot, and but when I look at my team now building, I think I have the same pride as Elon Musk looking at people building Teslas. because it's becoming it's like machine age. It's becoming not, it's not, oh, I'll slap this piece and I'll put this piece. No, each piece is like 3D printed, and you have a robot coming clack and connecting this to the piece and putting that piece, and you look at it like a humming machine. So, and your organization, it needs to hum. It needs to work. If you want to build the next Teslas, you need to take this kind of psychology and to build it with the right tools, the right kind of machinery, to build the right kind of, how do you say, mif'al, the factory. You need to, it's like the mechanical thing of like the factory.
So we've been talking a lot about what Linnovate does and what you do in the now. Can you throw us into the future and what do you see some next steps are? What innovating or innovation is on?
So I think there's a lot of path to cover. This kind of cloud native revolution has just begun. Okay, so we're kind of early adopters, and we work with banks and with defense companies and with startups, and we work with very varied, or like take like Dan Hotels, like one of like the premium chains of hotels in Israel. They're working like 2 years in Kubernetes in production using Rancher. We represent Rancher in Israel, which is this software to manage Kubernetes clusters. But they've been using Rancher and Kubernetes for the past 2 years. And, there's a Asaf, their kind of VP R&D, they're the guy that leads their development. So he goes to this conference, and he sends me a WhatsApp message from the conference. He says, because he's speaking, in the conference, people are coming to him, telling them about Kubernetes, about the future. And he says, hey, I don't know, I'm running this in production for the past like a year, and things are humming and things are working and they're stable. And we're not having, and basically this Kubernetes and CICD and DevOps are like the method. They are the factory for digital representation. So if the Tesla is taking, the actual obtainable goal is building like an amazing car, building an amazing company in the digital age, in this kind of COVID, everything's digital, kind of age. So the whole idea is that Rancher and Kubernetes and DevOps are the factories, the new age factories that are 3D printing and building this stuff. And we want to create more and more clients like Asaf from DAM, people that say, hey, I don't need to reinvent my infrastructure, it's already built in. So, take us, just because when we build the product, we kind of lost the ability to build it simply in the old ways, in the old system admin Linux ways, because our mind is, we took the red pill, and now, you're in the matrix, and, so, and sometimes, so we're not really fitting to do like a simple website that we used to do, just like just a blog or a marketing thing. There are people that do it cheaper than us, people that do it easier and faster, on WordPress or whatever. But we're here for the kind of the complex and the ambitious, which are always cloud native, which in the end either fall into an existing startups Kubernetes strategy, or help organization build the Kubernetes strategy. Basically, our arcade support kind of program. So it has, I think it's build, and it's shift, and it's manage. And what's build, we'll build a Kubernetes cluster for you. So if you are totally kind of perplexed, look, we'll build it for you, and we'll train you. This is how you use it. And shift is the shifting of the development practices into the CICD world, is building the infrastructure for this and working with the development teams to change the way they craft the software. So if build was, okay, I'll put this gigafactory, if the walls and everything like that, so the shift would be to put inside the robots, to take inside all of these robots and software to build like your specific assembly line. You have your assembly line, so we program with your developers the assembly line. So that's like the shift thing. And the deploy and the manage is, we will also put the guard in the factory, and we'll have monitoring that all of the robots are behaving nicely, and we'll have like this thing. Once you have like a red Tesla, we'll check the color. Yep, it's red. It's not orange. It's So the idea is basically that's like our offering around K8 support, because but the main thing behind this is that we really love Kubernetes, and it's not we think, we know, we live this new age of Kubernetes, and we really like impacting. There's this notion in Judaism and in Jewish spirituality of lashpia, is like effect, So what are we here to basically affect and inspire and move, not just think about our own thing, but we want to come and help organizations and affect them positively, into this kind of cloud native age.
Well, it's clear that you have the passion and that you have really that mastery. It's a pleasure listening to all this. So let's take someone who is a junior DevOps. What can they do to really get up to par and really increase their skill set?
I think when you're a junior, you're choosing. It depends if you're already working or if you're kind of training yourself towards it. But basically, it's making these kind of choices, is being aware of these choices. Maybe I should work in environment that it's forward facing and not backward facing. So make these decisions. Instead, maybe you get a couple $1,000 more. In like organization, like a heavier, more like that ministry that I told you, like Ministry of Health, something like that. But maybe a startup will work with Kubernetes, and train yourself forward, not backward. And the choices you make look forward, not backward. When I made this choice, I left, I started with Linux in 2000, and I did not go, all the money and everything was in the Solaris thing, but then it was this little skimpy startup, that working with Linux, and it was, wow, this is like, looks like the future, so maybe I'll go there. So this is, affect your choices. And then there's all kinds of certifications you can do. There's the CKA, and Azure has its own certifications. So basically you can use certifications and pick the right shoes. Like Rancher is amazing software that lets you manage Kubernetes, and it makes Kubernetes less frightening and more accessible. There's another one called Lens. There's Harbor. There's all of these kind of tools inside this ecosystem. And if you need help, get a guide, or have people like us or people like other people that are genuinely, interested in hand-holding your, because you can build yourself, from the bottom up. No, I can do everything yourself. And that will be like a half a year journey, and you might make mistakes, and your boss might be kind of perplexed. Why is it taking you so much time? I learned a new word. So anyway, but maybe you can simply spend, I don't know, like 3 weeks and set it all up, and be the office hero. I don't know, because so as you look at this, but definitely go cloud native, go Kubernetes, go Docker. Try to stray away, be the change you want in the company. So hey, I'd like to, maybe let's do this, in Docker. So learn Docker Compose. GitLab, amazing tool. With GitLab CI, amazing tool. Okay, and obviously I'm very kind of biased, and kind of disclaimer, we represent Rancher like in Israel, and we represent Ubuntu Israel. So obviously it's not, we have our own very opinionated way, and we're blogging about this opinionated way. So when we talk about like complete CICD, so we kind of have this thing basically combining GitLab and GitLab CI and Harbor for the Docker registry, and for the Helm, what else? Another something kind of registry, and then with Kubernetes with Rancher. And we're very, this is our tools. This is the area that we
Dedicated.
By the way, another fascinating technology by Rancher is called K3S, and it's a very small, Kubernetes. So suddenly, okay, I've been like a server guy for years, and servers, they live in big data centers or in clouds. Suddenly I get this request, hey, I want to run Kubernetes on a Raspberry Pi or NVIDIA Jetson. And but wait, this operating system is for cloud. It's not for, little, small, skimpy computers, which are like, I don't know, like 1/10 of the power of your average laptop. Right. So, how are you going to run this huge thing, cluster, blah, blah, on the small? So Rancher, basically what they did is they took most of Kubernetes, most of the lines of code of Kubernetes out, and made a very, very thin Kubernetes. You remember this abstract? I can describe an application, put it whatever. I can put this application in a Raspberry Pi. The same thing I put in a cloud or in an on-prem, I can put it in a Raspberry Pi. But then I can apply the same tools and methods that you use on cloud and CICD, I can apply them on embedded devices. So if we go back to the Linux metaphor, that Kubernetes movement is like Linux, it's cloud native is like the Linux foundation. So when you look at that, what happened in Linux about 2005 is that people said, hey, okay, this is cool for servers, but there was like Monta Vista Linux, let's apply it to embedded devices, little gizmos and smart fridges and rockets and, all kind of, satellites or Teslas inside, it's all Linux, this is a flow. But what's happening now is with K3S, it's like the Monta Vista of Linux. This is the embedded support for Kubernetes. But this opens out, this guy calls us a couple of days ago, and he has a startup. He has some issues with this kind of startup that has drones picking fruit. What? So you have like the drone applying AI to figure out if you want to pick the fruit, and have like a robotic arm that takes the fruit, and it doesn't need to squish the fruit and take, and basically it's using for agriculture, and that's nuts, that's crazy when you kind of imagine the stuff that you can do. Yeah. So the idea is that, and once upon a time, this embedded thing, it was, hardware engineers flashing ROMs and doing all of this kind of designing chipboards. And once you have this in place, this layer of abstraction, what's happening is you just do the CICD thing on GitLab to Harbor to have, it's all the same tool. And it's very powerful for organization or for junior DevOps or for junior developer to simply, hey, it's just, if you're going back to Matrix, it's like Neo saying, hey, I know Kung Fu. I can do embedded development. I'm much more, versatile and can be much more relevant to the market.
So when a company is deciding whether or not they should jump into the cloud and jump into Kubernetes, from our conversation, it seems like there are no hesitations. Is that true or?
I mean, it depends. There's this kind of, there's this book, Crossing the Chasm. So basically it talks about, there's like early adapters, and then there's the mainstream, and then there's the late adopters. And there's this chasm between the early adapters to the mainstream. Now Kubernetes is already mainstream. Any bank that you're using has either serving it through Kubernetes or this. All of the startups, everything, all of the huge, any cloud has managed Kubernetes. So it's not a question of if they should do it. It's a question of when they should do it. And, and just look at your manpower and look at what you're trying to do. And look, it's the question is not always, yes, ditch everything, go to Kubernetes. That would be kind of it's it's childish. You can't just kind of have production clusters and the clients and blah blah. It's not. But the whole idea here is how do I formulate my Kubernetes strategy? how to understand. It could be like in the next year, in the next quarter. That's fine. And that's that's basically where we can help you guys, help people figure out, okay, how should we do this? And we do this across various companies we consult to, and a lot of times it's just taking like a small project, doesn't need to be a huge project, and saying let's do this on the new way, on the new CICD, and we have like a very opinionated, there's different ways to do it, but there's our way, and we can deliver that, and I think it will help organizations, migrate to dishing out Teslas.
So essentially, you could consult and help companies strategize and make their Kubernetes strategy.
Yeah, it's all part of the skate support thing, or Linnovate. Linnovate basically does the software. We build software, and Kate Supports builds factories. So basically, we build the way you manufacture, and we tend to your factory, and we help you build this factory.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add?
No, again, I think we love what we do, and it's exciting. And when we work on this, and I have the privilege of being taking part in big projects that and being this Lashpia thing, affecting companies, affecting them. So it's like a privilege. So everything's fine.
How can people reach out to you? Do you social media? Can they send you an email?
It's always Lior Kesos, LIORKSOS. It's like in the Facebook or Twitter. I'm not very active in either. I mean, Facebook a bit more, or just contact Linnovate or Kate Support. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for sharing your passion about helping companies and about the entire space of open source and how Kubernetes Cloud is really changing the game for so many companies, both big and small, but allowing some smaller companies to really be like bigger companies.
Totally. Go Tesla. Okay, bye.
Enjoy your spaghetti and your ravioli.
No problem. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.